kind of who showed up first gets to go first. So Patti gets to open things up, and then we'll bounce around a number of different topics for a while. Patti mentioned, give us your turn for an opening comment.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Patti Robinson. I have grown up in Iowa. I grew up outside of Guttenberg, Iowa. And 31 years ago, I came to Clinton with my husband because he took the executive director position at Skyline Center here in Clinton. And through that time, I've worked with the school system, both in Guttenberg and Clinton, in the special education programs, and then went back to school and got my degree, and eventually started working for Clinton County in their case management program. And in 1998, I became the administrator of that program. And I was there until this past February when we had to close our doors due to the privatization of Medicaid. So that's kind of the reason why I'm running for state senate, is to try to figure out a way to fix the Medicaid system, make affordable health care for everyone in Iowa, and then also looking at education and local economy as two other issues that I feel are important.
Chris Cournoyer, tell us a bit about yourself.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Chris Cournoyer. I live just north of LeClaire in rural Scott County with my husband Kurt and our 4 children. Our son Bennett's a junior at Iowa studying engineering. Our daughter's a freshman at Iowa State, and we have twin boys that are 6th graders at Cody Elementary School. I have a degree in computer science, and I've been self-employed as a website designer for over 20 years. I'm currently the president of the Pleasant Valley School Board. I'm on my 2nd term there. I've served as the board president for the past 2 years, and primarily the 2 roles of a school board member are to ensure that all students are prepared for post-secondary success while being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. So education is a high priority of mine. I also serve as the robotics coach, and I started a coding program for kids at Cody Elementary School throughout Pleasant Valley. I'm also a reserve deputy for the Scott County Sheriff's Department, so I'm committed to public safety, making sure our first responders have the resources they need to keep our communities safe, which includes mental health services for both children and adults. And then I'm also a member of the Iowa Governor STEM Council, where we work to create business education partnerships to ensure that we're preparing our students with the right education and skills they need to compete in the knowledge-based economy. And when we produce an educated, skilled workforce, we're able to grow the existing economy and attract new businesses and jobs to our area, because ultimately I'd like my kids to stay in the state after they graduate from high school and whatever additional training and education they get after high school. So I'm running for the Iowa Senate to put my experience and passion into action for the people of Senate District 49.
Okay. To the first topic, Chris, civility in the public and in the political arena has been a huge topic lately, nationally, locally even. What are your thoughts on that issue, and what can you do? Do you think it is an issue locally, and what can you do to help improve it if it is an issue?
Well, I think it's definitely an issue. I mean, I'm knocking on hundreds of doors, and people are sick of the partisan politics. They're sick of the lack of civility that's going on across the country at the national level, at the state level. And I think, what we need to do, I mean, we start locally with these types of things. And, something that I tell people all the time is I love being on the school board because it's a nonpartisan elected position. We're not there because it's us versus them. We're there for the students and for the taxpayer. And I would like to take that kind of civil, nonpartisan cooperation to Des Moines, because I think we definitely need to address that issue, and it starts at the local level.
Patti, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, definitely there's 2 extremes going on right now, and we really need to bring it to the center. My experience working with the county as the administrator, I worked with both sides, Democrats and Republicans, and you just, when you wanted to get something done, you had to come to the table and you had to have that discussion. I feel that the same way, being an administrator, I had up to 25 staff at one time that all have different thought processes of how things should be done. And I think that experience, bringing people to the table and having those conversations to come to a compromise and a solid discussion about what's best for, well, in that case, it was best for our consumers, but for me, it would be what's best for Iowans.
Patti, obviously in the last, the first two topics have really have maybe been in the headlines the last week or two, sexual harassment and sexual assault, whether it's in the workplace. In Iowa, there's the state paid out a big settlement for a sexual harassment claim recently in the state legislature. What are your thoughts on that, and what can be done about the issue of sexual assault and sexual harassment? Should the state, what kind of role should the state play?
Well, first of all, I think they have started education with the legislators, but it needs to be ground up. Everyone should be going through training for that. We started it a few years back when I was with the county as well. It needs to continue to grow. I've experienced the good old boy kind of conversations over the years when working, and it's uncomfortable. I guess my personality, I was always one that I could call someone out, but there are individuals that are in a situation that they feel that they're going to lose their job if they say anything, and that should not be. A person should be able to protect themselves and be able to go to their human resources or whoever it may be, because many places don't have human resources, but they should be able to go and talk to someone and have action taken, whether it's disciplinary for the individual that was causing the sexual harassment, or if they needed to be let go.
Chris?
Well, I think what happened, there should be a zero tolerance. It needs to be a very strong zero tolerance policy. When something happens, people should feel comfortable coming forward, and then it should be dealt with in a severe manner. I mean, it's a very serious topic across the nation, and the Me Too movement has definitely brought a lot of power to those where they feel more comfortable coming forward with it. But at the Capitol last year, they brought in Mary Kramer to do an evaluation and make suggestions. They did bring in an HR manager. Everybody at the Capitol is now going through sexual harassment training, and I think that's appropriate. And moving forward, I think they need to continue to take a very firm, zero tolerance stance on it. And this is something that we need to talk to our kids about at home, and make sure that they understand what the appropriate rules are and appropriate conduct around other people is. And I think that we can change that as a society, and it starts at home, and it needs to be enforced at the legislative level, so it's a model for society going forward.
Chris, let's you talk this one first. Education funding, maybe in three parts.
Okay.
For secondary, kindergarten through 12th grade.
Okay.
Community college and higher education, and they're kind of three separate issues, all dealing with education funding and all having varying impacts, varying interest across the district, your own district, and across the state.
Okay.
Take off.
All right. Well, let's start with K through 12. As the president of a local school board, I appreciate the fact that K-12 funding has been held harmless in the last couple of years through budget cuts. So I'm very proud of that fact and grateful for it. Something that we continue to discuss is making sure that we have adequate and timely funding through the supplemental state aid. I've been our legislative delegate where I've gone to the Capitol and advocated for adequate and timely school funding. It's important that we get that supplemental state aid number within the first 30 days so that we can hire and negotiate with our teachers and our employees and make sure we've got our budget intact for the following year. I've also advocated for the extension of the statewide penny, which is the tax that we can use for building infrastructure, school infrastructure. That is a critical source of funding for schools across the state. It currently expires in 2029. We would like to extend that to 2049 so we can continue borrowing for that so that we can maintain our schools and expand them as needed. As far as community colleges, they are an absolutely critical source of training and experience for not just post-secondary, but there's a lot of students that are still in high school that can get continuing or concurrent enrollment credits through the community college system. It's a vital part of the process. And one of the issues in Iowa, one of the biggest issues in Iowa is workforce. And we've got about 50,000 jobs that are unfilled. And then there are those skilled trades and those employment opportunities that you can go to a community college, get a certificate, get a 2-year degree, and go right into the workforce without the debt and you can get one of those good paying jobs with benefits that supports a family. And then as far as higher education, I have one child at Iowa and one child at Iowa State right now, so I think there's that's something that we need to continue to focus on. We want to certainly keep our kids in the state after they graduate from high school. We're investing $6,300 per student, K through 12, and the last thing we want to do is invest in their education and have them leave the state when they want to go pursue higher education. So making sure that we're funding those appropriately to make sure that we have high quality education at our regent schools would continue to be a priority as well.
I'm jumping quick, because you're writing the tuition checks that keep going up. Should the state spend more money on, finds a way to contribute more to the Iowa State UNI?
There are a lot of opportunities. My children were able to get scholarships. There's a lot of scholarship money out there. There's a lot of grant money. There's the work program. When you go to school, you work at the college while you're going to school to help pay for it. There's a lot of opportunities for kids to go to school, and community colleges also have the same grant and scholarship process, so that funding or money is not an issue to someone getting an extra education. And I would also like to point out that in the legislature, education is over 50% of a $7 billion budget. So I would definitely push to make sure that education continues to be a high priority in the state.
Patti, your chance to talk about all three.
Yeah, K through 12. 1% increases is not going to keep us going in the education system. It may in certain districts, but here in Clinton, we're very much, we have 37% poverty, and we aren't bringing in our tax base, and so it's very hard for our schools to compete in the education world versus other communities that do have a better tax base. And in our rural areas too, it's a struggle. And so I think it's got to be relooked at. The teachers are struggling. They are doing with less. They're paying out of their pockets for things in the classrooms because it's not available to them as it used to be in the days when I worked as a teacher's aide. There were more supplies. The classrooms were smaller, and actually, again, I was a teacher's aide. That's one of the first positions that usually gets cut, is someone who can support the teacher in the classroom. Our teachers are not just expected to be teachers these days. They're expected to be counselors, mental health professionals, sometimes parent. And the money, 1%, is not going to give them the skills and the support that they need and resources in their classroom. Community colleges, I support them totally. I graduated from community college, and I came from a family that my other three siblings went to tech school. And we all were very successful in what we did. But I also support moving forward if people want to do a 4-year degree. Problem being is that, again, our economy is not supporting our students to be able to afford to go to some of these schools, even though compared to a private school, yeah, it's cheaper. But when I'm looking at the individuals in Clinton and in rural Scott County, their parents can't afford to send them to school. So that means if they want to go to school, they have to take student loans out. Those student loans are getting more and more expensive. It's a deterrent for a lot of our kids. And so I just see a need to support our community colleges, our tech schools, and our universities, putting more funding back into that so that our children have the opportunity to go there, not at a higher tuition, and be successful and stay here. But if we're going to continue to raise the tuition, their debt's going to become higher. They're going to go somewhere else because they know the economy here cannot support them. And that's sad. I think we need to really look at the whole picture.
It passes, one of the issues you mentioned, that it's been a campaign issue, and that's the privatization of Medicaid. think the state's kind of into the second year of that,
Third year.
third, and an argument on each side whether the success of it and the efficiency of it, has it been a good move, do you think? Are clients being served, and is the state saving the money they predicted they would?
I have yet to see or hear how they're saving money when we keep backfilling the organizations to keep them going. Consumers are being served. Are they being served to the need that they have? Not necessarily. Over 25 years of working in the system, we had a good system when it was a state system. Administrative costs were low. I was trained, my staff were trained to be watchdogs of the Medicaid dollars. And so we took that very seriously, as the training allowed us to still offer services to our individuals. And we were able to meet their needs, but yet we were very conscious of how much money we were spending. When we would see areas where the expense was there, we could pick up a phone and have a conversation with someone. When someone was denied services, you could pick up a phone and you could talk to someone and work out the solution. And there were very few denials back in the early days. And once Medicaid privatization came in, it was almost instantaneous that services were starting to be cut. Not necessarily denied. Initially, it started out that they would just cut back the services. Then eventually, denials started, where providers weren't getting paid, especially independent CDAC providers. It was just like, because they didn't have the backing of a company, they were instantly denied all their pay. These individuals work from paycheck to paycheck. These are usually people that are family members or friends of a disabled person. And so they had done it out of the kindness of their heart all these years, and then they had the opportunity to get paid. And believe me, the pay is not much, but it was a paycheck. And then for them to be totally denied their whole monthly income, and they would say it was coding problems. They would say it was, well, your name wasn't spelled, you didn't have this in the right box, whatever. There were lots of excuses. And still to this day, I see on a lot of the websites that the CDAC providers, independent CDAC providers, are still fighting to get paid. And again, it's not a high-paying position. At least with the providers, they have companies, and they have people that go and talk to the individuals and try to figure out the problem with the payments. But these individuals that are just doing it on their own, it's a struggle, and they're not getting paid, so they're not paying their bills. That's not a good system. When we did have a system that worked, providers were being paid. They weren't being paid extravagant amounts of money. I really don't know where their cost reports were. They would do a projected cost report and then show their actual costs. There was no fluff in any of these costs. So I'm just curious as to why we went to a managed care system thinking that there was so much money being wasted, where now I just keep hearing more and more that we're having to supplement these Medicaid providers. So yeah, went on a ramble there, because it just bothers me that there's so many people losing services, that there are vulnerable, there are disabled, and there are elderly individuals. Nursing homes right now, I went to a forum just a month and a half ago. Nursing homes are losing, if you're a Medicaid nursing home and you have Medicaid patients, it's $17,000 that they're losing in Medicaid funding because they do not pay the rates that they were paid before. So if you are a person going into a nursing home and you're a private pay person, and you also have Medicaid residents, and the nursing home has to make up the cost, it's going to be the private pay side is going to be making up that difference. Their money's going to run out a lot faster, and then they're going to come to this side of Medicaid as well, and that's going to eat up. I don't know how providers are going to continue to run, because if you're going to keep chipping away $17,000 per resident in a Medicaid, there can't be a residential facility that can just take Medicaid individuals.
Chris, your thoughts? You got a lot of background, a lot to respond to.
Yeah, I was at that same forum at the nursing home at the Canonical, and they talked about, the Alverno. They talked about how those private pay patients are making up the difference for the money lost on Medicaid patients. There's over 700,000 Iowans that are on Medicaid right now, and those are our most vulnerable Iowans, and they shouldn't have to make a choice between making their rent payment and having health care. And so what we need to make sure is that they have a choice. I think that the free market and competition is good, and making sure that they have a choice to get the care that they need. It needs to be outcome focused for the patient. We need to make sure that providers are paid in a timely manner. We need to strive to minimize the administration of the program. That was a common a theme that we were hearing at the Alverno that day from the Hospital Association, where they were talking about how many hoops you have to jump through just to get something processed or just to get a patient moved from one facility to a next. We need to make sure that we eliminate any abuse or fraud in the system, and we need to make sure that the system is sustainable. Healthcare is a huge issue across the country, both at the federal and the state level, and we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make it more efficient and make sure that it remains focused on the patient and get those providers paid in a timely manner.
Chris, we're going to bring up an issue. I know Clinton has a lot of interest in this, and maybe some of the other area towns as well. And that's several years ago, the state cut some property tax levies for business and multi-residential areas with the theory that it would spur development. Some places it has, some places it hasn't. The state promised to backfill that amount that cities and counties were losing because, or did not gain because, or were not paid because of the cut. Some talk now of ending that. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on that? For the city of Clinton, that's been a huge issue and a huge budget issue.
Right. Well, last year at the last legislative session, I attended Clinton County Day on the Hill, where the Chamber of Commerce took a group of community leaders, business leaders, the supervisors, mayors, city administrators were there, and this was one of the top 4 priorities of Clinton County, was that commercial backfill problem. The issue that, they were trying to spur economic growth with that backfill. It did go very well in some other areas of the state. Cedar Rapids and Des Moines certainly saw benefits of that program, while places like Clinton County have not seen the benefits of that economic impact. So we need to continue to address that for the areas especially that have not seen the benefits of it. And I would be opposed to ending that backfill until we can find another option to help with the economy, the local economy.
Patti?
It was a promise that was broken, obviously, but I think a way to relook at that is to look at counties and areas that did not see or had very little benefit from the backfill, and realize that they're the ones that probably need more assistance, versus now that it's been going for a little while, to maybe look at the other areas that have experienced good growth, to taper back on that and allow these other areas that are struggling to have more opportunity to bring in more, so that they can try to improve their economy.
Patti, give us the district covers
Scott
Clinton County,
yep,
and a portion of
Scott County.
Scott County.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Clinton County is the majority, and I don't know the percentage, but it's a large percentage majority.
Yep.
How would you work to make sure that that portion of Scott County is in your thoughts and is
absolutely,
you pay attention
yeah.
to?
I mean, you've got we still have areas that are struggling in Scott County too. Parkview, small as it may be, it could impact them as well. They have going back to the poverty situation again, I gotta look at my numbers here, but their poverty level is 32%, in their area. Clinton is 43 in the town. So, I mean, you've got to look at where this economy is going to go and how we can build it. So it is part of my district. So yes, I would still want to have that improvement, not just for Clinton County. I have to look at the rural part of my areas too. DeWitt has hotels. Everyone has something that could be an improvement. And also, I'm thinking of the hotel tax as well. The businesses, small businesses could grow immensely if we could have some of that brought back.
Chris, what about representing both? Since you live in Scott County,
I do.
but the majority of people live in Clinton County.
It's about a 2/3, 1/3 split. So, being on the school board, we're by director district in Pleasant Valley, and so I represent the portion that's in rural LeClaire. But I consider myself representative of all students and taxpayers in the district, and that's exactly what I would do as the state senator in this area. I'm a member of the Clinton Chamber of Commerce. I have good relationships with the community leaders, the business leaders. I've met with a lot of people. I've knocked on a lot of doors up here. I've gotten to know what the issues are. I attended Clinton County Day at the Capitol last year, and I just went there to listen and learn about the top priorities of the state. We talked about the four laning of Highway 30. We talked about that commercial backfill, the hotel motel tax, and then the rundown properties and making sure that we get proper funding for that. So just understanding, meeting with the leaders, going to the various groups and listening to what their needs are, and I feel like I've done a good job of that. And as the state senator, I would represent everyone in this district, not just the people that live close to me.
Chris, another general question, Chris.
Sure.
And I don't have a specific topic. That might make it easier to answer. But if there's an issue, a topic that's before the legislators that is good for the Senate district that you represent, but maybe the Republican Party, in your sense, is not supporting that idea, how will you do that? Can you support something that's good for the district, but your party doesn't?
I'm being elected to represent the people of this district, so I would be there on their behalf, and I would fight for what we need done for this district.
If party politics plays a role.
I'm not there to play party politics. I'm there to represent the people of this Senate district.
Patty, same with the Democrats. If there's something
Oh,
there the Democrats
absolutely.
are supporting, but it's
Absolutely.
not good for the district.
You've got to get the people from the district to the table and hear from all sides to get their feelings on it. I'm there to represent them. And if I'm feeling from the district that they don't want something, I have to listen to that and respect that, so.
Really, Patty, one other quick question too before we get in. We got a few more minutes. We got a few more topics, but the legislators took away basically the public bargaining contracts.
Correct.
Teachers, education teachers, counties, school, cities. The public unions basically negotiating rights were taken away. What are your thoughts on that? Would you like to see that reinstituted, or has it been a benefit?
I don't see it as a benefit at all. The unions over the years has been a benefit, whether workforces want to see this or not, bringing in safety into their workplace so that we're not having to deal with catastrophic, dangerous accidents. Bargaining for your wages, your benefits, making sure that you have a livable wage. I think a lot of times people think that it's them against us as far as when it's the union against the management. I didn't have that experience in Clinton County. We sat at a table and we would have conversations, and we would have conversations with the employees, and we would have with the management. And sure, there were certain areas that you had to, put on the table and say this wasn't going to go any further. But I feel that, you know, it was an important way of approaching how you were going to benefit your employees. When this all happened in February, when they ended Chapter 20, it was about the same time that my staff learned that eventually they were going to lose their jobs with the county. And so they had been in this union situation all the time. My most senior person was 22 years on the job. And to know that in February, because at the same time in February we learned that AmeriHealth Caritas, who was contracted with us, was going to end our contract. And so they learned that they lost their bargaining rights, and then they learned that they were going to be losing their job eventually. So they had nothing waiting for them at the end. They knew that they wouldn't be able to bump. They knew they were going to be losing all their benefits. They stayed on the job. They didn't walk away. These were dedicated people, and I really feel that that's part of a bargaining unit, is that they're very much a family, and they take care of each other, and they're there to make what's best for the employees. And so, yeah, I want to see Chapter 20 come back and support not only just the county employees, but our teachers. Our teachers, they're doing, like I said, they're not only a teacher, they're a counselor, they're taking care of kids as if they were parents, and they're struggling at home with their pay and their benefits. You can have a 2-teacher family, and they're still paying off student loans and living in a small apartment because they can't afford. Why are we doing that to people that are trying to take care of our children and educate our children? I really feel that unions do a huge benefit to our employees, public employees.
Chris,
Yeah.
your shot. How do you view it, or do you have different views as you were on the school board when it happened?
Yeah.
Republicans are the party that led the way on that.
Yeah, and what happened, and I can speak directly, being on the school board, we went through that with our teachers and our staff. What happened was removing some of those mandatory bargaining items gave local governments, especially school boards, more flexibility and allowed us to better manage our employees and ensure better performance and deliver services in a more efficient way. So what we did as a school board, first of all, we got our contract signed before the governor signed the bill, because we wanted to make sure that we had time to really see what the bill meant to our district and how it would impact our costs. So I think, the fact that we have a really strong relationships with our teachers union, we have a really good bargaining process. It's called interest-based problem solving, where everybody sits down at the table and negotiates through those things. And we went through the guidance with the Iowa Association of School Boards, and basically if it was permissible, we kept it in the contract. If it was not permissible, we put it in the handbook. So those items didn't go away. Personal days, vacation days, grievance policies, they all went into a handbook, because at the end of the day, school districts and municipalities and county governments have to put together the best packages they can to retain and attract the best employees. But we have to also remember that we have to do that in a sustainable way, and we have to get control of costs. And I think that reform gave us some flexibility in order to do that.
That carried over the city and county as well, since they're as impacted as well as the public employee teacher unions.
Right.
I think it impacted there too, the same way.
Absolutely. I mean, healthcare costs continues to be a big issue, and until 2 years ago, a single teacher in our school district didn't pay a premium for healthcare. And everybody needs to have some skin in the game, and we need to make sure that we're taking on some of those costs and being responsible for our own health care on some level, in some capacity. So they did feel the impact. But again, at the end of the day, we have to put together the best packages we can at school board level, county level, and city level to attract and retain the best employees.
Chris, with the tax cuts enacted last year, quickly out there, here's your brief view of those. Obviously, that's kind of become an issue in the governor's race. Are those tax cuts that were passed sustainable? Do you think they impact?
I
the
believe
right
so,
place?
because letting hardworking Iowans keep more of what they earn, I think is a good thing. It's a good thing for our economy, and we can let them decide how to spend that money. And there are a lot of things that we can do to be more efficient as a government. And I think that that's one way to spur economic growth. When people have more of their own money in their pocket, then they can decide what to do with it, and I think it's a good thing. I mean, I feel, my husband probably feels the pain of paying property taxes more than anybody, and I'm very sensitive about that. And making sure that we can keep costs down so hardworking families can support their families and give them options. I just think that's the role of government, is to see what we can do to keep our costs down.
Patty, those tax cuts enacted last session.
Yeah, I don't think it's affected enough people. I think you're probably seeing more of it with people that are the corporations and the upper echelon are getting a better deal than the middle class. I think clearly we need to just go back and look at the whole state budget and just see, because it's a mess right now, and to be able to make decisions on what needs to be cut and what needs to be sustained, I really can't see how anyone can come up with a clear answer on that right now, because all of a sudden we found this money just a few weeks ago that because of some revenue that was not thought of just came up with the state, and now we have this money. There should be a better way of seeing quarter to quarter, month to month, where we're standing as a state with our money. And I think that's something that first day we're going to have to go in and really look at that budget and determine, are these cuts appropriate, or do we need to make changes? And I'm not saying that I'm against tax cuts. I'm just saying it needs to be reviewed. It needs to be all put out on the table and have a discussion about where is it the best, where do we best spend our money?
Patty and Chris, these kind of things nowadays seem to be called a job interview.
Yeah.
Because you're running for a job. So we'll throw in one job interview question that you may get asked if you're applying for a job at any place in town, private business or wherever else. And ask you, what's been in your career, however you want to put it, what's been your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
My biggest failure, and I always ask these questions when I interviewed people too, and they would take some back. Biggest failure. I think it was, taking the time to, I'm trying to figure out how to say this when you have a large staff, and learning how to communicate is a really difficult thing. And when difficult things came down the pike where I had to make some tough decisions as far as my budget went, I had to make some not bad decisions, tough decisions, because it was mid-year, and I'm learning from the state that, they're going to cut our rates back. So that meant I was going to have to let go of some people. And how I communicated that initially, because once I learned it over the years, because I had to do it several times over, I think that initial time of communicating with my staff on how that was going to impact them was probably one of my biggest mistakes. It's a mistake that I've learned from, because the more you talk to your staff and let them know, like ending our program now, this past year, my staff were fully informed of what was going on up to the day that they were let go, where when you have to lay someone off fast and furious, I think that was something that I really wish I had more training and more experience with, because I just didn't have that. And again, I think the county has improved on that. They have an HR person now, but I ended up having to be that HR person and trying to do that on top of my job probably was the biggest mistake of not having that information.
Chris, you had some time to think about it.
It's a tough question. Well, I would say 6 years ago I got elected to the school board, and I got elected because the person that was in the role before me was not doing his job. And when I finally realized that and decided I need to either put up or shut up and decided to run, I went into it thinking I'm going to go in here and change the world, and I'm going to do it by myself. And that is not the role of a school board member. So I quickly found out that the role of a school board member is twofold. One, to make sure that all students have an excellent educational experience that that prepares them for post-secondary success, and then the second part is to be a good steward of the taxpayer dollars. So I'm not in there to micromanage. I wasn't in there to get rid of teachers that weren't performing. I'm in there to be part of a board and guide policy and oversee the superintendent and be a watchdog of the school district. So, making sure that I fully understood what my role was there. It's a lot of listening. It's a lot of guiding people through the system and making sure that they're getting the help that they want. And when they have an issue, really making sure that I step back and see the big picture and not get too much into the daily minutia. So. As someone who is self-employed, I'm used to dealing with the daily minutia, and if it needs to get done, I do it myself. But making sure that I understood that I was part of a board, a 7-person board, and I was elected to represent all the people and the students and taxpayers in the district. And I feel like I've learned a lot through the 6 years being on the school board on what my role is there and how I can best effectively implement that role and represent the school district the best way I can.
Thanks. Patty, to wrap things up, we promised both of you a chance for a closing comment of anything. Is your time. Tell folks if we covered it, you can cover it again. If there's something you wanted to cover, we didn't.
Yeah.
Here's your chance if you can make it relatively brief, but we don't have a stopwatch. So.
I would say we really need to be looking at mental health. This is something that clearly in our state, in our country, we are dealing with something that is not being addressed fully. 20% of Iowans right now are diagnosed with some type of mental illness. And I do know in the education system that they have just passed that teachers have to go now through training, 1-hour training to about suicide. My son was a RA for Luther College, and part of his training was a full day of mental health 911, because as an RA you may come across someone who has mental health issues, and I'm thinking, okay, he's a student and just doing this role as an RA to try to keep the dorm at a level of civility, I guess, and calm. And he's 20 years old and he's getting mental health 911 training. And we have a school system where we're dealing with a lot of students, young students we don't know what's going on at home. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And 1 hour of suicide training, it's a start, but I really feel that if we can really put in the preventative services in our school systems with our police and sheriff, fire, all those individuals, and I know we're doing it here locally with the mental health 911, but I just feel we as a community need to come to the forefront of recognizing this and try to prevent mental health from getting to the point where we were dealing with down in North Scott, where a 12-year-old brings a gun to school. We've got to come up with some predictors and being able to identify these things in the school system, in our community, whatever it may be. Mental health is really, it's an illness, and people are not identifying it as an illness. I had a client at Salvation Army. She is a single mom wanting to get mental health care for her 7-year-old. She was working, and so she had her own insurance. The insurance only paid $20 towards a $250 mental health bill. She can't afford that. I mean, she had an $11 hour job. Yes, she had her own insurance, but that insurance only paid $20 towards that mental health bill. We've got to come up with some equity here as far as our health care and our mental health, and recognizing that mental health is an illness, and that we pay the same for the care that we're getting under mental health as we are for our health care.
Chris, your time.
All right, so I just want to thank you again for having me on today and giving me this opportunity. I've been involved in my community since the day I moved there, and I am seen as someone that can solve problems. I can work with people and get things done. My priorities of education, public safety, mental health, and economic development are exactly what I'm hearing when I talk to people around the district. I've knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors, and people are worried about, workforce and what's going to happen with are we making sure that we're preparing our kids for with the right education and skills they need to get a good job that will sustain a family and have benefits that can take care of their health care when they graduate from high school. So I want everyone to know that I'm somebody that would work hard for all the people in this district. And I would also like to point out that I recently received the Friend of Ag designation from the Farm Bureau. I'm really proud of that because we do have such a rural district, making sure that we're keeping our property taxes low. And I understand, the role of ag in the state is very tied to school funding, and making sure when the ag economy is high, the school funding number is up, and when it's low, the school funding number is low. So I understand that there's a lot of correlation there, and agriculture is an important part of our economy. I understand that economic development is a huge issue in Clinton County, making sure that we address those workforce issues, and that people know that you do not have to have a 4-year diploma to get a good job in Iowa. And you can go to a trade school, get a certificate, get an apprenticeship, go into the military, go directly into the workforce. You can get a good job here in Iowa. And we want to make sure that we have a skilled, educated workforce so we can attract those good jobs to Clinton County. So I would appreciate the vote of the citizens of this county on November 6th, and I promise I will work hard to make that happen.
Well, I think our State Senate District 49 candidates, Democrat Patti Robinson and Republican Chris Cournoyer, are with us on our program for today. Tomorrow, we will have State House District 97, Republican Norland Momsen, and Democrat Tim McClyman with us.